Hello, hello, guys. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Happy Tuesday night in the world of the GRE. Hello, hello. As you guys start to come on into the room, just let me know that you can hear me okay by typing in the chat window. Let me know. Yay. Awesome. Hello. Hello to everyone. Welcome, welcome. I see some questions coming into the Q&A. Do me a favor. In the Q&A, if you put something in there, let it be an actual question. If you can type in the chat window, that would be awesome. Quick bit of housekeeping as we get started. I would love to get our screen up and shared. Yeah. I would absolutely love if you guys have questions that pertain to the slide that we are working on. By all means, give those to me in the main chat window. If you have questions that involve the bigger picture of things, or you have personalized questions, if you will put them in the Q&A window, just so I can keep track of those there. I already have one question about the new developments of the at-home GRE. Note, guys, we are not going to go over that today just because that information sort of changes all the time and we always record these. But let me get you a great link where we are keeping the information up to date day by day. So the GRE updates as related to the take home and coronavirus business is right here. Our latest update is still back from the middle of March because nothing has changed since they started allowing it. Yeah, of course, of course. Welcome, guys. My name is Whitney, or Whit, either one. I am a GRE and GMAT instructor here at Manhattan Prep. I've been with the company since 2010. Been teaching the GRE for about half of my tenure here. I work a lot on our curricular materials, so making slides, helping edit things like questions and books, working on online materials. So pretty deeply entrenched in some of our materials here. I'm excited because tonight we are going to be using a lot of the GRE 5-pound book material available to you both through our site or Amazon or other booksellers out there. But we are going to focus this evening on quant and a lesson that I have lovingly called the first 30. And so my goal tonight is to talk to you guys a little bit about how slowing down can actually speed us up in terms of approaching questions. Yeah. So I want to kind of poll the room. Do me a favor, change where you're sending the messages and send the messages out to everyone. So not just panelists, but set it to panelists and attendees. What are some things, right? So imagine, close your eyes for a second and imagine that a quant question has popped up on the screen. What are some of the first things that you think or you do, right? What comes to mind when you think GRE quant? What hits this, like what hits the mind when that happens? When you see a GRE quant question? What do you think about when you hit a GRE quant question? Yeah, lots of numbers, right? That's what you might see. Start to jot some stuff down. Math, 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 math. All the math. So much math. Have you seen something like it before? I love that. Ooh, what kind of question is it in terms of content area? Is it geometry? I'm going to read the whole question. Okay. Read the whole question. Try to figure out what the question is asking for. I like all of this so far. So far, so good. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to really spend some time this evening shaping that first 20 to 30 seconds that you interact with a problem, because I think that for my personal experience, you can get so much information out of a question from the beginning. And unfortunately, so often we don't spend very much time on questions in the beginning. We just don't. I hate it, but we don't. There's this tendency to jump right in, to rush to writing things on our paper. Yeah, and of course, you know, you have pen or pencil and paper if you're taking it in the standard test center. You'll have a whiteboard and a marker if you're taking it, the at-home version of it. But you do have a writing utensil. You have a tool to use. So of course you're going to want to use it. But there are a lot of things that you can do to kind of get a big picture view of what's going on in the problem that happened before pencil ever hits paper or marker ever hits whiteboard. Yeah. And so what I want to outline is one of my favorite concepts that we like sort of believe in wholeheartedly here at Manhattan Prep, which is the UPS process for quantitative questions. U standing for the word understand, P for plan, and S for solve. So I want to give you a moment just to take a look at the size of each of these blocks, because I'm about to start filling in some information. What I want you to start to think about is that the size that I've made these blocks is intentional. These blocks are here because there's a lot of information that we want to deal with up front before the question even really gets underway, that isn't just solving. So a lot of times students ask me what makes you a faster test taker. And honestly, what makes us a faster test taker is this idea of recognition. And some of you guys mentioned it, like what kind of question is it? Is it algebra? Is it geometry? Have I seen similar things before? Rochelle, that was a great point. I love Corey, this like, hey, back it up even a step further. What kind of question is it in terms of the type, right? And so this idea of recognition involves not just doing a ton of problems and memorizing them, but recognition comes from slowing down and trying to take in all the clues. So what we're going to do is we're going to see like a smattering of problems tonight of all different content areas, all different question types. And we're not going to spend a lot of time actually solving them. What we're going to do is we're going to do one of my favorite activities, which you can do with a 5-pound book, or you can do with an official guide. Any book that you've got that's packed full of questions. It's a recognition drill. So it's a chance to just isolate some of those first steps. Like, what do I want to notice? What do I want to try and recognize? What is it that I'd like to pull from previous information that I've already used on questions before? What techniques and strategies do I want to try and employ? Can we take a moment before we jump in to think about our options? So our understand stage is really an information gathering stage. What type of question is it really is highlighting what Corey mentioned, which is like, is it a quantitative comparison question? Quantitative comparison is really this idea of two quantities, and we want to compare rather than compute. We've also got discrete quant, which I like to subdivide further into multiple choice, choose all, and fill in the blank. And we've also got data interpretation. So these are all the various kind of interfaces in the quant section. The second thing we want to think about is exactly what you guys are saying, like, what are they asking me for? And part of this, I like these next kind of three pieces. What am I given? What can I jot down? This is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. What do I notice? What sort of patterns do I see? Am I given real numbers? Is it words? Is it story problem? Are there fractions? Are there decimals? What do the answer choices look like? If I look at the quantities, almost just kind of like with soft eyes in a quantitative comparison, are they similar? And so it's more of these like nuanced just like letting the brain take things in. As we start to plan, we want to think about like, have I seen this before? What are some strategies that might apply both to this type of question or this type of content? And then what are some of the formulas I know? Some of the methods that have been shown to be really useful for this type of problem. Pictures, tables, graphs, right? It's only at the very, very end where we start to get truly like into this step of solve where we're just rubber hits the road. There's also the place where if I'm stuck here, I'm definitely going to bail. But along the road, I'm going to bail as well. And if I don't understand the concept, I can't even tell what they're asking for. This isn't a question I should be investing my time on. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to move through a handful of questions multiple times. As we move through them, we're going to try and notice a single thing at a time. Okay, one single thing at a time. And so our first pass through a bunch of problems is going to be question type. So just note that I have left data interpretation off. I've left it off the table. We're just going to be working on DQ and QC. But I'm going to click us through a bunch of questions. I'm going to give you 2 seconds per question, 3 seconds per question. And I just want you to mentally say to yourself, or you can say it out loud right here at home, what type of question it is. Is it QC? Is it multiple choice? Is it choose all that apply? Is it fill in the blank? Okay, you're not trying to solve anything. You're just step one, acknowledging what type of question it is. Yeah? And you can say it to me, or you can just say it to yourself. Right, so far so good? Seemed pretty easy to identify what types of questions you're dealing with. Hopefully. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things I want you to practice doing, I know this sounds really silly, and like here's one final one because we didn't really see an example of it. I know this sounds super silly, but one of the things I want you to notice, I want you to make a special attempt to literally say the words to yourself, oh, this is QC. Like, oh, this is a QC question that I'm dealing with. Oh, this is a multiple choice question, individual answer choices. Oh, this one is a fill in the blank. And it just so happens to be kind of a 2 blank because it's a fraction. Or this one is a choose all that apply. Seems silly enough, I'm sure, but the first thing I ever want you to notice from a problem is literally what kind of problem it is. What are they asking for, right? QC, DQ, choose all that apply, fill in the blank. Okay, so the next piece is I want you to, for every question type, have an immediate plan, right? So no matter what the question type, I want you to do one thing as soon as you realize what kind of question it is. And I have a set of thoughts that I use for each one. You can choose your own as you practice. But what I want you to start to notice for these, so within individual question types, for QC questions, I want you to say to yourself, compare, don't compute. For multiple choice, so we'll go NC and choose all. I want you to scan the answer choices. You're going to do that before you ever read the problem. And for fill in the blank, I just want you to note the number of blanks and any instructions for the blanks. Just take a moment to notice them. Okay. So we're going to try that again. Anytime you hit a QC problem, I want you to literally just say the words to yourself, compare, don't compute. For multiple choice and choose all apply, I want you to scan the answer choices. And for fill in, I want you to notice the number of blanks and instructions. Yeah. Hopefully doing so good so far. So far, so good. Okay, so first thing I'd like to do is get a feel. How did those two steps feel? Pretty easy? Any of them not so bad? Yeah, cool. QC should be easy as could possibly be, right? QC. Compare, don't compute, compare, don't compute, compare, don't compute. I literally want that thing on permanent roll. The ones that can take a little bit longer are those multiple choice and choose all that apply. Right? So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that specific pairing of question, the multiple choice and choose all that apply. And we're going to take this scanning of the answer choices and we're going to take it a little bit further. Okay. So what I want you to do now, we're going to take a moment in the first 10, 15 seconds. And I want you to take a moment and just, what do you notice? Are there patterns? What type of number? Are they percents? Are they fractions? Are they words? Are they decimals? Are they integers? Are they clean? Are they ugly? Are they really spread apart? Are they very close together? Do they have variables in them? Right? I just want you to force yourself to take a moment. So what I'm going to do is we're going to move a little bit more rapidly when we hit QC problems. But when we hit like these multiple choice or choose all apply, I'm going to stop us and I want you to start typing in the chat window everything you notice. Okay. For fill in the blank, we're just going to kind of cruise right by them just like we did before. So we're just going to slow things down on this multiple choice, choose all that apply. Okay. So we've got compare, don't compute. Start typing in the chat window. What do you notice about these numbers? Nothing complicated, just simple. What are the first things that come to mind when you see these numbers? Right? Answer choices. So we're focusing in on the answer choices at first. Clean numbers, divisible by 10. Close together or far apart, guys? Close together or far apart? Increments of 30 and 50. Nice notice. So this idea of close together, I'm going to say actually these are pretty far apart. Like 100 and 260 are pretty far apart. Numbers that would be close together for me for integers would be numbers like 100, 105, 120, 135, 137. Once I've got numbers that are more like 50 to 100 apart, depending on the scale of the numbers, I'm going to start to think these are spread out. Now, if all of my numbers are in the 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, in that relative scale, I might actually think those are kind of close together. So this is going to be kind of a relative piece here, but I want you to notice pretty clean integers. They're all round, right? Divisible by 10. If you notice those like 30s and 50s. So up by 30, up by 50, up by 30, up by 50, right? Maybe you notice that. Okay. So we'll keep going. We got QC, compare, don't compute. We got fill in the blank where we're going to give our answer as a fraction. When not notified otherwise, you're going to put whole numbers. You'll put integers in those blocks. If you're meant to put a decimal, you'll be told how many digits to take that decimal. We got QC, compare, don't compute. QC, compare, don't compute. Multiple choice. What do you notice? What stands out? Type it in the chat window. Far apart, close together, clean numbers. Are there any symbols? Whole numbers, decimals, fractions, positives, negatives. These are a little bit closer together. Ooh, they are all money. I love noticing notation, right? Like I like seeing symbols like dollar signs or percent symbols. Ooh, what is it about C and D that stand out? They're all divisible by 50. What is it about C and D that stand out? Anything else? Are there any paired answer choices? Ah, so they are the two that have kind of a value in that 100th place. Nice. So we're looking for patterns. We're looking for repeated numbers, right? There's something really fascinating. 3 of them are so clean, and 2 of them are kind of weird, but they are all dollars. They are relatively clean, amounts, but they are pretty close in terms of number. Okay, we've got money again, but what changed? Not pretty, necessarily. We've got decimals, dollars and cents. So that might mean the math is a little bit more detailed. We got a crazy outlier. Yeah, I love that. I love that, Thomas. We've got 108 way down there by itself, and even a 520 kind of by itself. And then we've got these 3 that are a lot closer together, sort of shuffled up there in the top piece. Okay. QC, compare, don't compute. What do you notice? Two negative numbers. Yeah, so there's a split between this negative and positive. So things I like to notice would be this kind of spacing. Ooh, and we've got some opposites. That's another thing I like to notice. I've got a -5 and a +5, a -1 and a +1. They're smallish integers. I'm choosing all that applies. They are relatively close. They are relatively close. Cool. What do you notice about this one? Beautiful, clean numbers, right? These are lovely, clean numbers. 20 sort of stands out, but then 20 kind of goes with 200. We've got 50, 100, all very, very pretty, easy to mess with numbers, integers. Right? QC, compare, don't compute. Nice, and you guys are getting even more granular. Like they're all even, they're all divisible, but they all have a 0 in the units digit. They're all very clean numbers. They're all in the hundreds. They are in fact pretty spread out. Again, I've got a couple lumped together in the hundreds, a 200, a 300, and a 400. Some spacing there. What about this one? What do you notice? We've got variables running around. There's words. The language is different. These are sentences. These are, in a sense, like a phrase. Things like factors and multiples. These words of factors and multiples. Those alone give me a clue about what kind of question it is that they're asking for. 2 of them, yeah, use the exact same language. 1 uses sort of a twist of that language. Okay. Fill in our blank. Hmm. Days of the week. They're not numbers. Guess what I know when I've got things like dollar signs and days of the week? I know I'm dealing with a story. I know that before I even have to deal with the problem. Yeah, I'm dealing with a story. You see? Fill in the blank. What do you notice? What do you notice? We've got some opposites, positives and negatives of the 256s and the 116s. Not clean. Ugly numbers. Fractions involved. We've got that one number that's unpaired, that negative 64. Okay. Giving our answer as a fraction, fill in the blank. QC, compared on compute. QC, compared on compute. What do you notice? One odd number, they're all even except for that 5. They're not the prettiest numbers in the entire world necessarily, but they're not terrible. I mean, 5, 10, 18, 30, 54. Some of them are really, really pretty. Okay. I see angles. QC. What do you notice? Yeah, they are all fractions. And it's 1 over something. Yeah, they are all 1 over something. They are. The rest of them are like several of them are divisible by 3. I'd also want you to notice something like that. Why would I draw a line right there? Why did I draw a line right there? Yeah, small versus big. In fractions, what are some easy fractions to estimate? A half. A bunch of those are really, really small. Most of them are smaller than a half. There's only one that's greater than a half. So if I knew my answer was going to be greater than a half, that could be really helpful. The same thing's going to be true for percents. What do you think a nice easy percent is? What's a nice percent benchmark? Yeah, 50%. So you know what I'd want to notice with this set? I'd want to notice that I've got a couple below, couple above. What else do you notice in these percents? And what about those 2 fractions, Paul? What do you notice? Yeah, so 2 of them are uglier, but they are paired. We've got pairs again. They sum to 100. All things we might want to utilize. Like, oh, I bet those are going to be my mistakes, right? Like, one will be the right answer, one will be the wrong. What do you notice? They all have the same denominator, and you might be missing kind of the most obvious thing. They all have variables in them, right? They all have variables in them. Variables often mean we can plug stuff in. Plug stuff in. Yeah, think of factoring. Look for similar things in the answer choices. What about these? Yeah, FOIL. Exactly. What about these? They all have pi. As soon as I see pi, I know exactly what kind of problem I'm in. As soon as I see pi, I know I'm dealing with circles. Yeah, exactly, Axel. I know I'm dealing with circles. So there's a ton that we can gain from answer choices. Are my numbers big or small? Are my numbers spread out? If they're spread out, I want to remember that maybe I can estimate. If I see pi, right, I know, or some of the square roots, like square root of 2 and square root of 3, I know I'm in some sort of geometry problem, even if there wasn't a picture. See dollar signs, see words. If I see fractions, I think about where I could cut them, smaller or larger. Positives versus negative. I mean, if I know the answer is positive or negative, I can very quickly get in and have a solution maybe that's like at least a guess if it's enough that I know that an answer is going to be positive or negative. Okay, so one of the things we want to add, what do I notice when a question hits the screen? I want to notice the question type. Within those question types, I want to think about things like QC, compared on compute. When it comes to multiple choice, I want to scan the answer choices and then maybe add that extra step of what do I notice. When I have a fill-in, I want to notice the number of blanks. Are there any instructions? All right, so we're going to add an extra step to QC this time. I want you to start to look for similarities in the quantities. Versus, so there's a second thing I want you to notice. So similar to this multiple choice, like what did I notice? For QC, I want similarities in the quantity. So are there any similar terms on both sides? Are they written in the same way, same language? The second thing I want you to notice is an easy number in one quantity. This is typically going to be quantity B. Is there just a simplistic value in one of them? So is the information given in similar ways? Or is there a simplistic value in one? So what do you think? We're just going to hit QC at this point. Just going to hit QC. Similar? What do you think? They both have quarters. They both got thirds. They look like a headache. They look really similar. They're both ugly fractions, right? They're both very ugly fractions here. All right, versus something like this. What do you notice in the two quantities? Quantity B is real simple, while quantity A is like a story. I want to notice this because one of our techniques when we're trying to compare two quantities is if one of those quantities is extraordinarily simple, I can compare against it. It's a technique we call compare, pit against B. So if I can simply figure out enough about quantity A to compare it with B, that might be enough. I may not have to actually simplify and compute. What do you notice about these two? What do you notice? Similar ugly format. Some simpler fractions. But notice the repeats. There's a 4 squared in the denominator on both sides. There's a 3 squared in the numerator on both sides. There's 5s on both sides because I know they're in that 45. Right? I see 75. There's 5s in there. Yeah, we're probably going to be able to cancel out some factors. Nice. Okay, what do you notice? Quantity B is easy again. Something more complex for quantity A. Quantity B, something a little bit more simplistic. What do you notice? I've got X's in both. I got a 5 in both. I got a 40 something, like 40,000 or 40 times X in both. They are comparable. They're comparable. What do you notice? They're both wordy. Yep, they're both some sort of story. I'm going to have to solve for both pieces. What do you notice? They're both slopes. They're almost identical. They're almost identical. What do you notice? Yeah, words versus number. Quantity B is super simple, right? Means that I'm going to have to do some sort of solving to get A, but then I can just pit it against B. I can just sit there and compare with B, and it may be enough. I may not need to actually solve A, because it might be enough to be like, is it bigger, smaller, equal to B? What about this guy? Super similar. Yeah, they're both remainders. I'm going to have to do something that's kind of the same for both. What do you notice? Variables, different variables. Okay. What do you notice? They're both standard deviations. And even more particularly, they're both like standard deviation of set M, standard deviation of set N if I change it. Yeah, exactly. I love the way you put that, Pal. It's that quantity B has some sort of condition, right? We've got an added step in quantity B. What do you notice? I notice that there's not necessarily right answers. It's just like, well, what am I noticing? Yeah, it's two different shapes, areas of those shapes. I'm going to need to do some thinking about both quantities. So notice that if I'm comparing against B, I don't have to think about anything with one of the quantities. All the work I'm doing is for one, right? Quantity A. But when both columns, when both of my quantities have more detailed questions, I may not be able to solve them conjointly. I may have to do them independently. Versus, what do you notice about something like this? They both have Kendra. They both have me solving something. We both have twice of Kendra's age. So there may be some concurrent solving that I can do. Okay. So one of the things we want to do, what kind of question is it? For QC, I want to say the words to myself, compare, don't compute. Hey, just kind of surface level, what do the two quantities look like? Multiple choice or choose all that apply. Let's scan the answer choices. What do I notice about them? Small numbers, big numbers, easy to work with numbers, spread out numbers, fractions, decimals, symbols, expressions, words, variables. QC are what we call quantitative comparisons. So this is the question kind of that we started with. This is a QC question where your job is to decide which quantity is bigger. So quantitative comparison, which quantity is bigger? Great question. Okay, so we've got a little list of things that we want to notice for QC that's kind of an add-on, a little thing that we want to list, and we have answer choices that's an add-on. Last but not least, and so fill in, we don't really have an add-on here. Last but not least, we're going to notice this for all problems. This is before we ever start reading. We also want to have a moment of what jumps out. Right? And so when I say what jumps out, I'm thinking, are there symbols, expressions, pictures, words that are like quick signals of what we're testing? So for example, this problem, what might jump out to me? Percent symbols. Right? That indicates that I'm probably doing something with percents. I know that might seem minor, but I'm already starting to get a clue as to what the question is testing. What do you notice? What jumps out at you? Yeah, fractions. We got fractions all the way across. What jumps out at you? Fractions again, but big, nasty, messy fractions. What jumps out at you? Fractions and a story. So I want stories to jump out. I see actual vocab words, right? So I see textbook, notebook, a person's name. I want to notice a story because sometimes I can estimate. I know a lot of times we're afraid of story problems because the intimidation is having to translate into algebra, but often story problems allow us the opportunity to think more realistically about it. Right? It's a real world setting. I can put myself in the real world. We've got fractions again, but what is layered on top of fractions? Exponents, primes, right? Primes with exponents. What do you notice? This one's kind of an easy one, right? I'm immediately primed for circles. Immediately. Right? Not just geometry, but circle problems. Percents, money, big amounts of money. Dollar bills, exactly. Money again, right? Story. We never deal with money if there's not a story. What jumps out in this one? Percents. Yeah. X marks the spot. Beautiful. Variables, exponents. Another word, if it catches your eye, could. Words like could be, must be, max. What's like the maximum value, the minimum value, right? Our opposite answer choices again. Beautiful. I love that you're pulling back some of the stuff that we noticed in the answer choices. I see a square root of 2. Screams some sort of geometry. See the word triangle? Yep. Haven't even read the sentence. It's just like, oh, triangle, square roots, got it. Right? Even numbers, hypotenuse. Yeah, I'm starting to see ratio, 3 to 4. Sometimes it's useful to say nothing. Like nothing really jumps out at me here. I've got income, but it just seems like a word problem. I don't see a bunch of percents. I don't see, exceeds twice this just seems sort of like a word problem. That's okay too. Money, percents. Fractions, positives, negatives. Identical numbers. I see -3/4 in both of them. What rules am I probably going to need here? Circles and squares. Yeah, I probably need something to do with like an area of a circle, an area of a square. As soon as I see this picture, I'm already starting to think things like, hey, the length across the middle of the circle, that's how it's related to this square. Right? The side of a square is the diameter of the circle. Cool. I haven't even read the problem. I'm just sort of letting the juices flow. Creative juices flow. First thing that jumps out. Ratios, 50-50 mixture, solution, decimal answer, measurements, ounces. I love that word solution though. And I know I'm in a solution mixture. I'm, often in this kind of like weighted average space. What jumps out? Yep, percents. What jumps out? The variable. Potentially the word factor or multiple. That tells me I'm probably in number properties of some sort. The words must be true. What do you notice? Yeah, prime, factor. What do you notice? Nice. What do you notice? I love the word remainder in that one, by the way. What jumps out? Yeah, the word sequence, right? It looks like a sequence. We've got this subscript notation. That's often like a quick, easy type of problem to recognize. What jumps out? Right? Some problems are super straightforward. It's like, oh, I know exactly. We're testing sequences. We're testing ratios. We're testing percents. We're testing circles. We're testing triangles. We're testing coordinate geometry. There's a symbol. What does it usually mean when they give us like weird symbols? We're testing function. Weird symbols mean function. What are we testing? Yeah, we've got a rate problem. Distance, rate, time. As soon as I know I'm in a rate problem, I start to think, could I draw this out? Can I estimate? What do I notice? Yeah, right? I know. It's like, wait, hold on. I'm already starting to think about where this is going. Notice how much stuff you start to notice. I think that's the other big thing is when I take the pressure off solving, holy cow, I start to notice all kinds of stuff. What do you notice? I see the word remainder. That sometimes means divisibility. But then I've also got these big honking numbers with powers. Is this one not showing up? Oh, sorry, it might not have clicked forward. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Nick. Yes, thank you. I see the word remainder, but what comes with that? Yeah, it's like a big exponent. We don't normally have these big bases with these big powers unless we're looking for a pattern. A pattern, right? I can start to tell, like, oh, this is going to be a number that's crazy. I'm looking for pattern recognition. What jumps out? Yeah, we got the variable g, and we've got a simple number and quantity b, right? So we'll start to like stack on what we notice. I see words like ratio. I see a variable. I see a simple quantity b. I'm literally just information gathering. It's an indicate all, right? It's a choose all that apply. It's motorcycles, so it's a story. I've got a 35%. I've got language like could be the total number. Yeah, nice. Paul caught that could be. It's my variables. What other big word jumps out before I even really have to read what word might hit my eyeballs? Mean, average, exactly. Oh, well, I know the formula for average. That's already getting me thinking about which way to go. Some problems are instant giveaways. Standard deviation, right? Like it's an instant giveaway. I need to know something about standard deviation. I see integers or sets. That makes me think about something. What word or word jumps out? I got fractions floating around in my answer choices, right? Don't ignore those. I got those fractions down there. Fractions up in the problem. And one big giant keyword. Yeah, boom, probability. I've already got a sense of like, oh man, I'm a mess at probability. I'm gonna flag and skip. I'll come back later. I don't want to do probability right now. It makes my head hurt. Let me go see if there's something easier to do. I see words like area. And then I see quickly, it's like parallelogram, trapezoid. I'm not even reading each one. I'm still sort of scanning across. Parallelogram and trapezoid. If I'm immediately like, oh God, area of a parallelogram or trapezoid, I do not remember those formulas, bail. Right, let's move to the next problem. Just because they serve something up doesn't mean I have to do it in that order. What do you notice? What jumps out? Percents? Humongous percentages. And then like wildly different. 1,000%, or excuse me, 100% versus 20,000%. There's a conversion. I'm going to need some sort of conversion here. Yeah, variable exponents. When we have variables in the exponents, we're looking for some sort of pattern. How can I get some number to some power to equal the number 64? What are the possibilities? What am I going to need to know for this one? Circle stuff. I love the way you just put that. Circle stuff. I'm going to need to know some stuff about circles. What do you think I'm going to need to know for this problem? What am I going to need to know for this problem? Age problems. Creating some sort of equation. And age problems are always pretty similar. In fact, yeah, I love that, Corey, keeping track of a timeline. Holy camole. Holy camole. I got ugly fractions with variables, denominators all over the place. They all have the exact same denominator, right? They all have this 8xy. I'm either going to simplify this thing. I've got variables, which means I might be able to just kind of plug in numbers, see what happens. That might be cool. Foil the top. Yeah, I like that. Okay, what about this guy? Let me notice. What's the 100%? I've got words, something about profit. I keep seeing profit, 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 profit. Percent answers. Rectangle, triangle, right triangle even. Yeah. Shapes. You already gave me the picture. Yeah. Life gets easier when you gave me the picture. What jumps out of this one? Money, 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 and maximum. I always want to notice things like max and min. That means I'm looking for like extreme values. I'm looking to kind of play with some of my levers. So I know that this seems like a silly exercise, or at least it does sometimes, at least initially. But what I want you guys to do, so a couple of things. One of the things you can do is grab any book that you've got that's got a bunch of GRE questions. And I had a great question in the chat window or in the Q&A that was like, wait, you can skip and come back to questions in quant. Yes, you can. I would flag them so that you know that you skipped them. There's a review screen that'll show you all the questions and it'll tell you which ones you've answered, which ones you flagged. You can absolutely skip, and you absolutely should skip, because on the quant section of the GRE, it's literally how many questions you get right that determines your score. And so it doesn't matter if the question was like easy or hard, all the points are the same. No, they do not get harder. And in fact, of your 20 question sets, some of your easiest questions may be questions 18, 19, and 20. So the last thing I want to do is like burn up all this time on questions that are about topics that I know already I do not feel comfortable with. I don't want to burn up my time on those. I'd rather be like, bag it, don't want to do it, next. So you would always want your, question 20, exactly, could be a total softball question. What a heartbreak if you don't get to it because you wasted time on all these like hard questions for you. As far as math sections, should you focus on first? Do you mean what kind of math question? Because the math section, you can only do those sections that you've been given. So you can't like bounce around. So you should focus on the first one you're given first, really. That's a dumb question. But yeah, so whatever your strong suit is. So for me, right, I love QC. So that quantitative comparison question type, I love those because they feel fast to me, right? We want to finish those in about half the time that we're going to do all of the other question types. And so they're a little faster. I don't necessarily have to do as much math. They're easier to jump in on, and I don't have to think about the process as much. And we've got lots of videos about like the QC process and attacking them. So I like to start with QC, which is great because they come first in the math section, right? So those are the first 6 or 7 questions you'll see in each section. Some people hate QC and instead like the section that deals, like the little set of questions that deals with the data interpretation, so graphs, like charts, like pie charts and that kind of thing. So I know some students who jump all the way ahead and do those first. QC are always at the beginning. Yeah, exactly, Jillian. They are always at the beginning. If you hate geometry, you could literally skip every geometry question and do everything else first. Come back and do those second. Right? If there are certain things you're like, I know I hate probability. I have no idea what to do when it comes to like giant text word problems. Right? That's another one. When I see a problem that's like 8 lines of text, sometimes I'm like, not right out of the gate. I need some time to warm up before I get to that. Flag, move to the next. Flag, move to the next. To be honest, I want to make sure that I've had a chance to put my eyeballs on every question in each section when I work on it. And so some of this like initial, like quick and easy, what do I notice, is a way to start to prime the pump. Like, okay, what's the problem giving me? What information is already starting to reveal itself to me? Because you know what I'm not in a hurry to do? I'm not in a hurry to commit to a plan. That's usually the problem, is that we get in this hurry to commit to a plan. It's like, oh, I got to get stuff on my paper and I got to write it this way before we've even really given ourselves a chance to just like ease into the problem. And so I like to have this kind of like baby checklist of just information gathering because it gives me something to be doing immediately that isn't committing to some plan based on assumptions that I've built with incomplete knowledge. Once I've done my little quick, like, okay, what did I notice? What's here, right? Like, it's almost like a quick scan of the problem. Now I'm going to start to read. Now I'm going to start to sketch things out on my paper. I might draw that shape. I might make a table. I might start to translate into equations. I might have already been given an idea that like, man, I'm just going to play against quantity B. I've already sort of looked ahead at what my 2 quantities look like. I've already looked at my answer choices. They have variables I might plug in. I know that this is the which of the following could be true problem. So maybe I plug in for that. I know this problem is about money. Maybe I try to make it real because it's like a real life story. In terms of stats, if you include algebra, so a question that came in the background was like, how much stat will there be? If you're going to include things like average, you'll see stat. right? But for the most part, your statistics like standard deviation are pretty infrequent. Topics like probability, relatively infrequent. Yeah. But there will be a little. You might see median. You'll certainly see probably at least one average problem, like I said. Not tons. But any of these problems where you're like, for example, if I were to see this as the very first QC problem that I saw, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. It's way too complicated. You know what I'd rather do? I'd rather do a QC problem that looks like, I stopped my share. Hold on, let me try it again. I'd rather see a QC problem that looks like this one. All right? If I don't feel comfortable with geometry, I'm not doing this QC problem first. You can't make me. I'm going to look for an easier one. If this is my first multiple choice problem and I hate story problems, probably not going to do that one first. I might do this kind of problem first because I like percents. I just know that I need to be really careful. The answer choices are pretty far apart, though. They are really nice and simple and clean. Nice. That gives me a hand thinking about it. I hate choose all that apply. And then choose all that apply with questions that are like theory. I may have found out that by taking practice exams, theory, choose all that apply, are nightmarishly hard and take me forever to do, and I'm super inefficient. Honestly, I might just randomly pick an answer and not even flag it. Right? Maybe not even come back to it. If I feel super comfortable with sequences, I absolutely want to do this one. If I feel garbage with sequences, I'm absolutely going to skip this one. Right? Like, I might come back, I might not. The language on this one seems pretty simple. Might be easy to get into as an early question. Ditto for something like this one. It seems pretty simple. The quantities are pretty small, nothing too complicated. I might jump in. But if I don't know anything about standard deviation, this is not going to be my problem. If I don't know anything about trapezoids, maybe I do know parallelograms, but I don't know trapezoids, I'm not going to get started on this one because I'm only going to know half of it. Right? If I feel really comfortable with circles, but see the word sector and think, ooh, I don't think I know sectors, that gives me a clue. Maybe I have learned the technique of kind of building a table for age problems, so this becomes an easy problem for me to get started on, or I feel more comfortable with it. This might be a story problem, but the language is simple enough that I feel comfortable. Right? I might see a word problem of this length and think, oh, it's mostly just percents. It seems kind of straightforward. Let me go ahead and read this one. It doesn't seem as daunting as, say, a story problem that involves probability. Right? So what I'm doing is I'm taking a moment just to sort of let myself experience a problem, and then I get to be the boss. I get to make some choices. So the reason why these first 30, right? Like I fundamentally believe that first 30 seconds, and you don't even need 30. Notice that by the time, for most of these that we looked at, you need like 10 seconds. So much is revealed to you in 10 seconds. So much. Right? So I want you to start to think, what do you notice when a question hits the screen? And hopefully the first things you notice are like, what kind of question is it? You're going to give yourself a moment for each question type to have kind of a thought. And then you're going to sort of say, big picture, what do I see? What jumps out at me? So as a quick quiz in the chat window, when you see a QC problem, what's the first thing you want to think or say when you see a QC problem? Boom, compare, don't compute. What's the first thing you want to do when you see a question that has multiple choice answers? Scan them. Exactly. What's the first thing you want to do when you see a blank question? How many blanks are there in the instructions? Start to lock away, like, what are the things about those answer choices for DQ that you want to notice? I want to see things like, I want to notice fraction or percent. I want to notice negative numbers. I want to notice clean versus ugly. I want to notice how spread out they are. I want to notice symbols, and I want to notice variables. Then just give yourself a second. What word, pictures, terms, shapes, what jumps off the page at you as you're just giving yourself a chance to like take a breath or two, problems on the screen, in no hurry, on the beach, have my cocktail. I'm sitting there enjoying the sun, right? I want to be able to have this chance to just relax. I'm just going to let what comes in come in. Yeah. So grab a book, grab a 5-pound book, grab an official guide, grab any materials that you have, grab an old practice exam, click through the set, practice just noticing. But you can make it feel that nice, right? I know, Corey, that it's not going to feel like spring break, but you can get it to feel a lot more like spring break than we let it. The first 10 seconds are more about letting go than digging in as fast as you can, right? Like those first 10 seconds are like, I'm not in a hurry here. I'm going to let the question tell me about itself. Once I have kind of a few bits and pieces of data, now I'm going to start to look at it more wholly. If I've already looked at the answer choices, as I read the question, I'm already seeing the goal line. If it's QC and I've already sort of scanned both quantities, as I go up to use any introductory information or as I start to work, I have both quantities in mind. Okay? So what we're doing is we're trying to just kind of let those first, honestly, I say 30, but like 10 to 15 seconds, just give us like a little Cliff's Notes to the problem. So then when we start working on it, it's like, oh yeah, I've kind of already seen a lot of this. I get it. Okay, here's what we're going to do. So give it a shot, right? Go practice it on your own. And this is kind of the drill that you'll want to do all the time. I have my students, my private tutoring students, my class students do exactly these drills a few times a week because I want your brain to know that those early steps are that important. They're that critical because it makes the rest of the question go that much faster, that much more smoothly, that much more spring breaky. Or as spring breaky as we can get it. Yeah, spring breaky as we can get it. Cool. All right, guys. If you have any questions for me, feel free to stick around. I've got one. 2 big numbers, needed to multiply them on an ETS, but the calculator will give you an error anytime, right? If I see giant numbers, I know that the calculator is probably my enemy and I'm looking for a pattern. Right? Big, ugly numbers, I'm looking for a pattern. QC problems, I'm looking to compare. Yeah, so anytime a calculator, just side note, guys, anytime a calculator gives you an error message, you weren't supposed to use the calculator. Right? An example of that would be 3 to the 45th. You're not gonna be able to do anything like that. Nice. Okay, so great question in the chat window, and I hate that I thought I had an example, but I don't. I didn't have one. For fill in the blank, if the question asks for a decimal, it will tell you how many digits to take that decimal out to. So it would say something like round it to the nearest 10th or round it to the nearest 100th. I've never seen an example where you needed to fill zero, like trailing zeros in. Nice. Any other questions, guys? Nicely done. Good luck with your first glances, your scans, your spring breaks. your 15 seconds. Look, you get a little baby 15-second spring break 20 times during the quant section. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Stay safe out there. Be kind to one another. Be kind to yourself. Right? Be kind to yourself. Be absolutely thoughtful and kind. It is a brave new world out there. I'm going to put up my favorite kind of picture that I saw this week that got me thinking about, like, yeah, we do need to be thoughtful for ourselves. Okay. I'll leave you with this. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Take care, guys.